Hi there. My name is Laura Lundquist, and I'm a physiotherapist and owner here at Zoomers Physiotherapy and Health Solutions. Today, I want to talk to you about the importance of stretching in a walking program. Stretching is something that most of us have heard a little bit about at some point in our lives, and that many of us probably don't do as much as we could or maybe should do in conjunction with our walking program. And the reason that this is so important is that walking as an activity is very repetitive. It's a very healthy activity for your body. It has all kinds of wonderful effects for your heart health, your muscle health, and your overall well-being. However, it is very repetitive. In the average 10 minutes of walking, we will take 1,000 steps, which will be 500 steps for each of our legs, doing basically the same movement each time. As a result of that, a lot of the muscles that we use during walking do tend to get tight. And sometimes they don't just accidentally loosen up between walks. And over time, that can create a problem. And as a physiotherapist, I see lots of people who come in with walking-related injuries associated with tight muscles. So if we're in agreement that stretching is a good idea, the next important thing to understand is what kind of stretching. Certainly when I was growing up doing sports and physical activities as a kid, we used to do long held stretches before our activity. Well, since then, there's been a lot of really great research done that has shown us that that kind of stretching is actually not that effective in terms of preparing us for activity or reducing our risk of injury while we're participating in sport or activity. So it's not to say that you shouldn't warm up before you go, but there are actually two kinds of stretching. One is dynamic stretching, which is stretching with movement. And the other one is static stretching, which would be the more stereotypical stretches that we think of where you stay in one position for a longer period of time. Dynamic stretching is actually quite a good idea before physical activity and sport because it helps ensure that we move through an exaggerated motion that's required for the activity to make sure that we have enough flexibility and comfort to participate safely. With walking, because it's an activity that we do use on a day-to-day basis just to get from point A to point B, we don't necessarily need to do a really specific dynamic stretching warm-up, but rather we might just think about walking a little bit more slowly and in a relatively easy part of the route for the first 5 to 10 minutes of the walk, and then really feeling like we hit our stride and can work out a little bit harder through the middle and end of the walk. But when we get to the end of the walk, that is where stretching becomes even more important. And so it's a couple of these stretches that I want to show you the technique for today, and a couple of the common issues that I see people run into in terms of technique, performance, comfort, and effectiveness. So static stretching will be, as I mentioned, holding the same position for a longer period of time, usually for something like 20 to 30 seconds, and we would probably repeat it 2 to 3 times on each side for each position that we're doing. I'm going to show you today 4 stretches, and we're going to start from the top and work our way down. So we're going to start with the hip flexor muscle at the front of the hip. We use this muscle with every step that we take forward, and especially if we're going up hills, we tend to use that muscle quite a bit. In order to do this stretch well, I usually recommend that people take a chair or a wall, but a chair works really well, holding the back of the chair. Then you're going to step one leg backward like this, with your back heel up, and both toes pointed straight ahead. Keeping your body nice and upright here, you want to just let your body come forward slightly without twisting through the hip in order to feel a stretch right there at the front of the hip. Should be very comfortable. And you just hold here again for 20 to 30 seconds to stretch the hip flexor. And again, we would do this 2 to 3 times on each side after the walk. One of the common errors that I see people make with this frequently is that they'll bend backward to try to get more stretch. And although that will be effective in stretching this muscle a little bit more, it tends to create lower back pain for a lot of my clients. So I usually recommend just trying to use that slight translation forward without putting too much stress in the front knee to get an effective stretch for the hip flexor. The next stretch that we're going to do for the next muscle down the front of the leg is for the quadricep muscle at the front of the thigh. So for this one, you may or may not need to use a chair. And I'm going to show this without having a stabilizing surface in front of me. But if you're doing it at home with a chair, I want you to make sure, or on a bench, I want you to make sure you've got something to steady yourself with your hands. And then you're going to reach one leg up and back like this, so that you can stand in a nice upright position with the thigh pointed straight downward, feeling a stretch through the front of the thigh. It's important here to make sure that your leg is relaxed. If you feel like you're trying to hold your leg up like this, you're going to tend to find that you get a cramp in the back of the hamstring muscle. So standing nice and upright, holding a stabilizing surface if you find you need it for balance, and again, holding for 20 to 30 seconds. This muscle is really important. Again, it's the one that straightens our knee. We use it in every step, especially up and down hills. Tends to get tight for sure. If you don't find that you get a stretch for the quadricep muscle in this position, you can also hold a more standard position just like this. Again, perhaps holding something for stability, keeping your body nice and upright, thigh pointed straight down. If you find that this is too extreme, but this was too easy, you can also get to this same position, but instead of holding with your foot, put a strap or a towel around your ankle and hold in this position without needing quite as much bend in the knee. You do want to make sure you don't feel like you're leaning back or the legs are out to the side. I often see people doing this stretch like this. It's not going to be effective to get the full muscle on stretch unless the leg is pointed straight down. All right, so we've done the hip flexor, we've done the quad. Now we need to do the hamstring in the back of the thigh and also the calf. For the hamstring, best option is if you can find a place to sit, straighten one leg out in front of you, holding your body nice and upright, tip from the hip just like this to feel a stretch behind the thigh. You can use your hands to support yourself on the knee here and just hold in this position. It's not particularly important for the toe to be held up. In fact, if you hold your toe too far up, you'll probably get a really strong pull down the full length of the leg, and that's actually a nerve stretch as opposed to a muscle stretch, which is not really what we intend to be doing. So let the toe be up, but just kind of relax without forcing it up as far as it can be. If you don't have something to sit on, you can also do this stretch in this position without having the seat and just maintaining here. It takes a little bit more strength and stability on the supporting side, but it's a great option as well. The last stretch is for the calf. So these calf muscles are so important for propelling us forward. On every step we take, we use these big muscles to push ourselves forward, lift our heel as we go. So in order to stretch that muscle, we're going to take our hands again on the wall or on the back of a chair, having both feet pointed straight forward and the back knee straight. Hold the body nice and upright and feel that stretch in the calf just below the knee. Again, body should be nice and upright here. This feels very similar to the hip flexor stretch, but because we have the heel down, you're going to tend to get a stretch in the calf before you get a stretch in the hip. Unless you're very tight in the hip, in which case you may feel it there too, and that's okay. Becomes a bit of a 2-for-1. So again, you're going to hold here nice and upright, just like this. Common mistake I see with this one is people trying to stretch really deeply down like this. But of course, our calf muscle is not attached to our back, so there's no need to be bent forward here. Body can be nice and upright to lessen the stress in the low back. Hands on a stabilizing surface, coming forward just like this. So there you have it. Now you know the importance of static stretching at the end of your walk, and you've got some strategies for hip flexor, quad, hamstring, and calf stretching. Have a great walk.